Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. This is part 58 of ASP.NET Core tutorial. In this video, we will discuss how to handle 404 errors. That is page not found errors in a centralized way in ASP.NET Core. Along the way, we will also discuss these three middleware components that deal with status code pages in ASP.NET Core. There are two types of 404 errors. There are two types of 404 error. Type 1 resource with the specified ID does not exist. We discussed how to handle this type of 404 errors and displayed a more friendly and customized error view to the user in our previous video. And here is the second type. The URL does not match any route. For example, /foo/bar. This does not match with any route in our application. In this video, we will discuss how to handle this type of 404 error in a centralized way. If we take a look at our program.cs file, here is the configure the HTTP request pipeline. Now let me tell you first why we are using this program.cs file to configure our page error. Use status code pages. So let me clarify first that what is the difference between program.cs pipeline and startup.cs configure. In older ASP.NET Core versions, you had a startup.cs file with the configure services, register services, configure method, defined middleware pipeline. In .NET 6 Plus, including .NET 8, you are using program.cs combines both into a minimal hosting model. Builder.services add controller with views, replaces configure services, variable app is equals to variable app equals to builder.build method, middleware calls app.use xyz, replaces configure. So conceptually, startup.configure method is equal to program.cs pipeline app.use configure pipeline app.use. The difference is just syntax and structure functionally. They do the same thing, define the HTTP request pipeline. Okay. So if we take a look at our program.cs file, it contains the middleware configuration into the app pipeline. Here we have the section. This is the section where one can set up the HTTP request processing pipeline for our ASP.NET Core application. At the moment, we do not have anything configured. At the moment, we do not have anything configured within this HTTP request processing pipeline to handle 404 errors. So as a result, if we navigate to localhost port number /foo/bar, so go to the browser. So localhost port number /foo/bar. We see the browser default. So issue the request. So we see the browser default 404 error page. This is because this URL /foo/bar. This is because this URL /foo/bar does not match with any routes in our application. Notice the HTTP status code is 404. These three status code pages middleware components are used to intercept and handle these success HTTP status code in the range of 400 and 500. The least useful among these three is this use status code pages middleware component. To use this within our ASP.NET Core application, we have to configure it into the HTTP request processing pipeline. We do that within the program.cs file here. So if the environment is development, then we want to use the standard exception handler middleware. So go back to the program.cs file. Within the program.cs file here, so if the environment is development, then we want to use the standard exception handler middleware. If it is any other environment like staging, production, etc., we want to use the status code pages middleware component. Notice from the intelligence. So first let me clarify what is the environment. So here we are using if the exclamation mark app.environment.is development. The exclamation mark is the logical not operator in C hash. App.environment is development returns true if the app is running in the development environment. By writing if logical not operator app environment dot is development. You are saying if the application is not in development, it is in staging or production. Right now, our app is in staging and development environment. Our app is in staging and production environment because we are using logical not operator. Then run this block. Means in production or staging, use a generic error handler /home/error instead of showing detailed developer errors. Enables HSTS HTTP strict transport security. HSTS stand for HTTP strict transport security, which force browser to use HTTPS for security. Now, what are development, staging, and production? ASP.NET Core uses environments to let you configure behavior differently depending on where the app runs. What is development? Used on your local machine. Shows detailed error pages, developer exception page with stark traces. Easier debugging but not safe for end user. Staging. What is staging? A test server that mimics production, lets you test deployment before going live. Usually hides detailed errors but may have logging enabled. Production. What is production? The live environment where real users access your app. Must be secure, stable, and user-friendly. Shows friendly error pages like /home/error instead of raw exceptions. Uses HSTS, caching, and performance optimizations. You set the environment using ASP NET Core environment variable. So how we can set the here we can set this is the ASP.NET Core environment. We can set the environment using the ASP NET Core environment variable. ASP NET Core underscore environment equals development, either staging or production. So we want to use the status code pages middleware component. Notice from the IntelliSense. So here we use status code so we want to use the status code pages middleware component. Notice from the IntelliSense we see the 3 status code pages middleware components. Let's try the first one and see what we get. And try the first one and see what we get. Let me tell you that we are not running our application in the development environment. It is running in staging or production environment. So save the changes. And you should also build the solution. Go to the browser. At this point, if we reload the page, notice we see a simple text. So reload this page. Notice we see a simple text response status code 404 not found. In some case, one who do not get this simple text response status code 404 not found and still see the browser default 404 page. This is because at that moment our environment is still development, but now our environment in which our application is running is of production or staging, because we are using logical not operator. As you can see, logical not operator. Okay. So logical not operator means our application is not running in the environment of development. It is running in staging or production environment. So those who are using startups.cs file should change the development to productions. They can do that in launch setting.json file. Launch setting.json file of the property folder. In launch settings.json file for the IIS Express profile, they should change ASP NET Core _ environment development. Change to staging or production. Because in startup.cs file, there is a method, configure method. In that configure method, you see this block. You see this block. Okay. Okay, now what? So we see on running after using this use status, the first middleware use status code pages, we get this simple text response status code 404 not found, as we see in our case of using program.cs file. Now this is not a very different from the browser default 404 page. So for this reason, we rarely use this use status code pages middleware component. In a real world production application, status code, real application, in a real world production application. Now what we are really want to be able to do is intercept these now what we really want Now what we really want to be able to do is intercept these non-success HTTP status code like this 404, for example, and then return our own custom error view with our own view, with our own view. We have complete control over what HTML we want to send back to the user. We can very easily achieve this. We can very easily achieve this by using any of these two middleware component. Let's first try out this status code pages with redirects component, middleware component. So in the program.cs file, here, instead of using status code pages, let's use status code pages with redirect. With redirects, status code pages with what happened to it? Why it is showing red squiggly? It should be pages with redirect. Okay, we need to specify parameter in it also. With this middleware component, we can specify the URL that we want to go to. If there is a non-success status code, for example, in our case, we want to go to error controller. We don't have error controller yet. We don't have error controller yet. We will create it in just a bit. Within the error controller, we want to go to an action method that has the same name as the non-success HTTP status code. For example, if we have 404 status code, then within this error controller, we want an action method named 404 to handle that. For that, I'm going to include a placeholder here. I'm going to use a placeholder here. This placeholder automatically receives the non-success status code. For example, if we have a 404, then the URL will be /error/404. So our obvious next step is to add this error controller. Let's add it to the controller folder. Select MVC controller empty. Let's add it to the controller folder. Select controller class and let's name it error controller. Error controller. We can name this action method anything. We can name this action method anything. I'm going to name it HTTP status code handler. HTTP status code handler. We are going to use attribute routing to get to this action method. If the route is error, if the route is error, if the route is error / some non-success status code like 404, then we want this action method to be executed. Instead of hard coding this status code like this, let's use a placeholder. Instead of hard coding this status code like this, let's use a placeholder. Let's use a placeholder. Now, if there is a 404 error, this parameter will automatically receive that non-success status code 404. Now, if there is a 404 error, this parameter will automatically receive that non-status code 404, and we want to pass that to this action method. We have already passed this to this action method. Inside this method, we can now write our own custom logic to handle 404 status code. I'm going to use switch statement. And switch on the status code. Status code. Status code parameter. Switch on the status code parameter. If the case is 404, on the view bag, On the view back, let's include error message property. On the view back, object, let's include error message property and set it to sorry, the resource you requested could not be found. Finally, let's use the break keyword. Finally, use the break keyword and break out of this case statement. At the moment, as you can see, we are only handling the 404 status code, but you can see the pattern here. We can write our own custom logic to handle any of the non-success status code in the range of 4 and 500. 4 and 500. Finally, from this action method, we want to return our custom view not found. Finally, from this action method, we want to return our custom view not found. We don't have this view yet. So let's add it to the shared folder. Select razor view, name it not found. First, let's set the page title. For that, let's use title property of the view bag object. First, let's set the page title. For that, let's use title property of the view bag object. Let's set page title not found. Next, let's display the error message that we have in this error message. Next, let's display the error message that we have in this error message property of our view bag object on our custom view. For that, let's use an h1 element. For that, let's use h1 element. Finally, let's also provide a navigation link. Finally, let's also provide a navigation link that allows the user to navigate to the home page. Here we are using the ASP dash action and ASP dash controller tag helper to navigate the user to the index action of our home controller. At this point, let's save all our changes. Save all our changes. You also need to build the solution and go back to the browser. Now take a look at the browser. Notice now when we reload this page, we see our custom error view. We see our custom error view. When we click this link, we are redirected to the home page. Where we see the full list of employee. If we try to navigate to any route that does not exist, we see the custom error view. So navigate to if we try to navigate to any route that does not exist, we see the custom error view. At the moment, we are using use status code pages with redirect. At the moment, we are using use status codes pages with redirect middleware to achieve this. If we want to achieve the same using this middleware component, re-execute. Use status code pages with re-execute. Then all we have to do is in program.cs file, Instead of using status code pages with redirect middleware, use status code pages with re-execute. Use status code pages with re-execute middleware. Save the changes. Once again, save the changes. And build the solution once again. But before building the solution, see this error /404. Now build the solution. Now click on the list navigation menu item. We see the list of employee as expected. Now let's try to navigate to a route that does not exist. Now let's try to navigate. Now let's try to navigate to a route that does not exist. Issue a request now. Notice, even now we see our custom error view as expected. From an end user standpoint, there is no difference in the behavior. Now, from an end user standpoint, there is no difference in the behavior. So the obvious question that comes to our mind is, what is the difference between these two components and which one we should be using? We will answer these two questions in our next video. 3 simple steps to use these status code pages middleware component to handle 404 errors. First step, include status code pages middleware. First step, include status code pages middleware component in our application request processing pipeline. We do this in the program.cs file. Step 2, where is this step 2? Implement the error controller. Implement the error controller. And finally, implement the corresponding custom error view. Finally, implement the corresponding custom error view. That's it in this video. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day.